Hi, everyone. Let's see, I think we have everyone. There may be a couple other people trickling in, but I think this is the majority of us. So I'm gonna send the agenda. Some 2 minutes. No, that's the official filed one, because I just noticed there was a component missing on the website, but I'll send both either way. Okay, great. Did you guys get a chance to review the meeting minutes for the last meeting we had? Yeah. Okay, generally everything looks okay. I didn't misspell or misrepresent anybody. Okay, so sorry, Nat.
No, I was just saying, not that I noticed, but
Okay, okay, that's good. All right, so if we can just have a motion to approve it and then a second.
so moved.
Second.
Great, thanks. Thank you, everyone. Okay. So we have a lot to get through. If you guys need, I can also send the other documents. But I did want to have some time to discuss the commemoration commission meeting on the 25th. To see if you guys had any specific comments, anything that you wanted to make sure we talked about and discussed before we moved on to the next thing. If not, that's okay, but comments. Okay. All right, so
Hennessy, you're talking about the meeting we just had?
yeah, the commemoration commission meeting on the 25th, the larger one.
Yeah, well, I feel like you and we've kind of had that conversation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I was not. Oh, Suzanne, sorry, I wasn't able to join that one. So I'm not asking for like a synopsis, but were there any particular issues or pain points or revelations that came up that we need to be aware of here?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's yeah. Yes.
Okay, sorry. Very vague and general question, but I didn't know if there's just like one or two things that we could constructively tackle since I wasn't.
I mean, I would recommend, if you want, I can send it to you again. I'd recommend reading the meeting minutes from that one.
Okay. Okay.
You know, I think we reviewed what our subcommittee has talked about a lot, but you know, a couple of things that we're identifying is that we can't do certain things without a brand, without a website, without money,
Yeah.
which is what we've been talking about for a while. But I mean, it's on I think Monday, or like, I don't know, sometime soon, it'll be like 250 days till 250.
Yeah.
And that, when I heard that, I almost literally passed out because we have so much to do, and it doesn't seem like we have the capacity. So that was one of the things that we discussed. Another thing we did discuss was how to navigate that, and trying to create and support internal city things.
Yeah.
So that we could put something forward, even if it didn't, come out of the commission per se. And so a couple of things that I've done to push things forward is I'm having that internal project management group meeting on Monday with economic opportunity, tourism, sports, entertainment, neighborhood services, partnerships. So we're gonna discuss, we always discuss, I guess, but I've made sure what they want is a list of 250 events and organizations. And I told them that we would like all events that they do that are not 250, so that we can review that. We can review whatever is recurring annually so that we can figure out how to provide support or provide branding, reach out and see what we can do there. I'm also gonna be mentioning some partnerships that I think might be a good idea, that we've already, I think, discussed, with Main Streets or Open Streets. There's the nightlife economy, that's like a new department. They do grants.
Hennessy, I'm sorry to interrupt. Seems to be some background noise, and I'm having trouble kind of hearing
Okay.
you.
Sorry.
I don't know whose it is, but I'm sorry, I just can't hear you.
No worries. It might just be me. But let me speak up. Is this better?
Yeah, that's a little bit better.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna put this closer. Yeah, so, some partnerships with existing city departments that do things like grants for parties, for things like that, maybe with a focus around 250, whatever that theme is going to be. So that way we have something that's coming out of, that is a product of this. And another thing, so there's a Google form that I'm filling out now, to work with It to try to make that branding. It does ask if there's a website that's separate, and we can do like a boston250.com and have it redirect to the Commemoration Commission, and that way we don't have to build out a website. But I just don't, I'm gonna be honest, I think that the Boston.gov website is ugly. And it's not intuitive for somebody who just wants to see what the events are, who wants to engage in that kind of branding experience. So I think those are the updates that I have based on what happened at that last meeting.
Thank you. And that 250 days is 250th. That must be referring to Lexington and Concord, correct?
Mhm.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No problem. So I think that's it. So if that's the case, we can move on to the reports that I sent out. If we want, we can start with, nope, I don't have a preference. We can start with the Boston 200 final report or the Faneuil Hall Commission report. And I can share my screen. So whichever one you guys think would be best to start with.
I think it probably makes sense to start with the Boston 200 report, since it covers the waterfront. But I'm sorry to bring us back to the issue of funding, but I just want to flag for everybody, like it was in a very ambitious program and a huge amount was accomplished. But on page 24, it documents that they had $11.9 million in corporate and private funding available, as well as just short of $5 million in public funding that was raised for historic preservation programs. And if you do the math on inflation, that is like $40 million for the programming and $16.5 million in 2024 funds for preservation. So, I think you can see the power of that kind of funding available for the work, right? It takes a lot of funding to achieve something really big and ambitious. And one of the benefits of that scale of funding is that all of the private nonprofit partners who are eager to contribute to this don't fall into a situation where they're all competing with each other for scarce dollars. It's very hard to collaborate when nobody knows where the funding is going to come from, right? So I just want to flag that as like we are not operating from this place, and as a result, it's hard to know what we can propose or achieve. So I'm not sure that that's contributing anything other than just to reiterate what we've already observed before, but it just was brought home to me in looking at the report, because you sort of look through. I mean, not all of this is programming that we would want to emulate today, but there was some good stuff in there, and there was reach, and there was vision, and then you get to the end, you're like, oh yeah, and that's why there was funding available.
And that one, and what you just said, Nat, was the summation of the entire committee meeting. Without having this document, and it was a little bit more spicy. So if you could imagine, if you said that with spiciness and frustration, and it was multiple people saying it, that was the meeting. So Dave, there you go.
That was some spice, little edge. So what Nat
Yeah.
said, just a little edgier. Okay.
Yeah, a little bit more edge and spice, and because I think people were feeling frozen and like, okay, and what do we do, and this, that, and the third, without knowing the resource allocation, it's hard to move forward, and people were feeling like they were going in circles as far as attending meetings and having the same conversation.
I agree. I mean, the things that the city has been saying has been make a plan and then put a number on that, and we can see what we do, which is why I figured we might look at these reports and see what they put a budget on. I mean, Margaret Dyson's from the Treasury Department. She was nice enough to find that 1988 Faneuil Hall report. And I don't think she said it never came to fruition, but that it might be a good baseline for us to review. So with that being said, I will share my screen. Can you guys see it? Yeah, okay, great. Okay. So I'm sure you guys already reviewed it. I think obviously the organization, it's clear that there were a lot of people working on it. They had some internal city office, and I think that executive committee would have, I think the function of the commission might have been something similar to that. Yeah, so this is their branding, their logo. City is the exhibit, or so it's the city is. So I was writing down, it was like the city is host, the city is cultural center, the city is destination. So they were building around the idea of the city. And so that's how they branded it. Okay, they talk about, now that the bicentennial is over, how will it be considered in months and even years from now? Will that era of confrontation be charged? That charged the 200th anniversary of the Boston Tea Party be remembered with a feeling of anticipation and excitement? I'm not going to read all of this. I just think, open to review it. But I think things that are important are like the city's new assets, tangible legacies of the bicentennial. When it was planned in 1972, major consideration was given to developing programs that would be useful after the conclusion of the bicentennial. Obviously, this was impossible to do when planning one-time events linked to historic or festive occasions. A potpourri of these Boston 200 activities generated by Festival American included reenactments, jazz, classical music concerts, festivals, forums, sports events, and other celebrative occasions. Festival American produced or coordinated some 500 separate events, ranging from the visit to Boston of the Queen of England and the 200th anniversary of the Boston Tea Party to presidential forums at Faneuil Hall, children's festivals at Copley Square. Enjoyed by residents and visitors alike, Festival American activities emphasize the richness and diverseness of Boston cultural life. So they talk about memories, and they are focused on yielding perceptible assets. So the visitor service program has been adopted by the Greater Boston Convention and Tourist Bureau, the visitor information line, publications like the Boston Bi-Week Calendar, Freedom Trail Brochure, literature distribution systems, distribution kiosks, Freedom Trail shuttle bus. Environmental improvement projects managed by Boston 200 also helps boost the city up during the bicentennial and are now permanent fixtures. The birthday book program was an innovative way for neighborhoods to enhance Boston's environment with sponsorship of small scale physical improvements. Okay, yeah, so just cities just reviewing what they did. I don't know that we have to go through it all, but I just wanted to get your thoughts on this like final product and what came out of Boston 200.
Has the city, it sounds funny, has the city, and I know Hennessy, you work at the city, has the city looked at this?
I don't know who in the city has looked at this, because I've shared it with you guys, and if people are reading my emails, then enough people in the city should have seen it. But it was provided to me by the archives department, and I've shared it out with basically anybody who is involved heavily in this planning. And I've shared it recently again. So I'm hoping that they review it, so that we can discuss it further. I also think it might be worth making it public, so that others can review it. But yes, so I have sent it out to the people working with me in ONS and Economic Opportunity and Tourism and Sports Entertainment. So,
Hennessy, in addition to this final report, there's also a 200 or 300 page plan
mhm.
that sort of documents everything as it was prepared for production. It's so if there's additional detail about all of the things that happened, if folks are interested, when the group Revolution 250 first started meeting back in before 2015, I think it was like 2013 or 2014, we did have Heron Ellenson participating. So Heron was, she was the vice president and co-director of the Boston 200. So I think she'd be happy if we wanted to talk with her about, any of the bumps in the road that they encountered or how they approached the planning. I'm sure we could get her to come to one of these meetings and share her thoughts.
Yeah, that would be great if we could connect and have her come to.
In this final report, I'm most struck by the emphasis on things that will outlive the moment, right? So it clearly was imagined as an opportunity to invest in the infrastructure that would sustain, education and tourism moving forward. And I think that, we've talked about that in past meetings. I think that's a useful frame for us as well. Things that we can leverage in the moment, but that will pay dividends over a much longer period of time.
I think that if we could get Heron Ellison to come to one of these meetings, that would be great. Maybe we can talk separately after this meeting to try to set something up with her. Now, if you're willing.
Yeah, let's you and I coordinate. I can send an email connecting her with you.
Perfect, thank you. Any other comments, reactions, ideas?
Sorry, I keep seeming to have something to say. It is striking that so much of the report is devoted to visitor services. I found that really interesting. There is a lot already here, and they took as part of their charge the challenge of wayfinding and providing information that would enhance the experience. There's information about illumination and that sort of thing as well. And it is I think it remains a need. I mean, we have probably better visitor services infrastructure than we had 50 years ago, but a lot of it needs refreshing, and this would be, it seems like an important priority. And, from the perspective of trails, that is ultimately a visitor services function more than anything else.
I think it also, and we can talk about how we take this framework to Nat's point and just adapt it or adjust it to our needs now. But from everything I've learned about this from Heron and others, and I wasn't around for the 200th, was that Boston kind of was at like an inflection point. We always are, right? But to Nat's point, I think maybe from what I understand, some of the emphasis on visitor services was that the moment was used to fund, and I'm sure Suzanne has thoughts on this. Oh, her mic's not working. Sorry, Suzanne. It really created a new identity and experience for Faneuil Hall Marketplace and the larger like waterfront in Boston Harbor, right? So that vision was articulated that we can use this moment and investment to create assets that are visitor oriented, but also benefit our residents that endure. And from everything I've heard, like that, they use that moment to do that. So now we have those assets, but so what is the way in which we think of still use that kind of paradigm thought, but apply it to now? Whether it's visitor services or just other neighborhood experiences or just like a broader Boston story. Like this one obviously hones in on a certain identity, which needs to be broader, but this is 1976. So it's just like, I don't know what the current chapter is. If we use that same framework, how we use this moment to do something that endures. I mean, I won't go off on a tangent about it, but obviously the Olympics are happening right now. And there's a lot of attention around what would have been the Boston Olympics. Boston 2024 tried to articulate that argument when we were pursuing the Olympics. Like, let's build for that moment, but for an enduring sense, infrastructurally and otherwise. So I don't know if maybe we try to articulate that, but in a fresh way for this.
I'll stop sharing my screen. More. Yeah, I agree. I think that I can resend. I've sent the Boston Student Master Plan a while ago, but I can resend it. But I think that they were very clear, which we've also identified that this is not about the particular moment in time, but it's about encompassing the past and making sure that it affects the future. So I agree. I think that it would make sense to see what was done and adapt it to today. Because we already have a framework for something that could work. Yeah, I think that would be a good start for us.
Hennessy, does the city have the capacity to do this?
To do what they did in 1976.
To contemporize the information on this document, and by the city, does that mean that you're going to do it, or is there a way through your department that the department that controls, again, we talked about these low-hanging fruits where pre-existing departments that are already doing something can rebrand what they're already doing for the 250. So for example, every open street from this point on should be Open Street 250. Every thing at the library should be whatever 250. Every unmonument event, that they're already doing, like these low-hanging fruits around commemoration that they already know the dates of. Every Donna Summer block party, every Rose Kennedy Greenway reopening of period should be 250. And so if you took this document and whatever said cabinet meeting, and they took it and said, oh, that's actually my cabinet, let me update this document so that it's not volunteer people who work at somewhere else redesigning something for the city and making a recommendation. That would probably be a lot easier, so that the people who would ultimately be responsible could update this based on what they know of their own staffing capacity to actually execute on it. Not us. That a recommendation would be, so our work as recommenders would be us recommending that this gets divided up appropriately to whatever appropriate cabinet member, and that they take whatever staffing structure they have and initiatives they have and use this to do that and recreate this document, not us doing it.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that's my hope, is that with that list of events that the city puts on that doesn't have anything to do, it's not like history or anything, but just what are the annual events. My hope is that we can identify which organizations, which departments are putting them on, and collaborate with them to then, reframe them to be a 250 brand, 250 focus. And so that was my hope with getting that started to be able to identify what events are happening, who's involved, and how to get them invested in this partnership. And that was my first thought in how to begin that process. I think the second part would have to be identifying what else in that 200 Boston 200 master plan is able to be easily digested today, so we can identify other departments that it's not just for events, right? But who might be working on trails, who might be working those like accessibility things that the Boston 200 was really focused on. So yes, I think it would be much more helpful if there was the capacity to do things with other department investment.
Yeah, to the point of capacity, I mean, it's intimidating to look at the long list of Boston 200 staff that appears near the end of the report, right? Like, yes, we should be leveraging the infrastructure that already exists in City Hall and in the various departments, but man, there were a lot of additional people who were involved in execution here. So we like, there's just no way of achieving anything on this scale without more capacity.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, there was, so that is one thing, and that is my hope, is that we can start to build those, you know, because they also talk about volunteers and things like that, and we haven't yet figured out a way to engage people who want to volunteer in a way that would be effective, because we don't have anything to volunteer for.
Right.
Right, and so one thing that I did, and that people have been sending me, is the Massachusetts 250 grant. I don't know, I'm assuming you guys have all seen it. Obviously it would get us nowhere near the
Mhm.
amount of money that they had, but it could be a good way for us to start something. And I mean, I think it would be good to know what you guys think about that. I mean, maybe we can transition to the Faneuil Hall report and see how they try to budget for themselves. If you guys think that would be appropriate.
Before we move from this, can I just flag one other thing that I think is worth just calling out as inspiration for our own thinking, is that there is on page 23 a note about the way the neighborhoods were engaged in telling their own history, right? So there was a series of 15 booklets in the Boston 200 Neighborhood History Series compiled by each neighborhood's residents from taped conversations with their senior citizens. And then there were also 19 Boston 200 neighborhood exhibits, which, you know, I think it's sort of a nice way of thinking about how we might, I mean, not that we would want to do it exactly the same way, but one vehicle for engaging citizens in the different neighborhoods.
Yeah, and I think, you know, the Timelines Archives and Curricula Subcommittee has identified wanting something like that. And maybe not with booklets, but something that's virtual and less expensive and more accessible.
Yeah.
But this is something where that was identified as being, you know, like ONS Neighborhood Services being the group of people to undertake that.
Mhm.
So that, because they would have potentially the capacity to do so. My concern with it is I feel like I would want someone to oversee that. Like, I would want there to be somebody who is knowledgeable about history, who knows what, you know, what questions to ask, how to engage effectively. And I'm not saying that neighborhood services can't do that. I'm just saying that I think, you know, it would require a little bit more collaboration than just letting them take the project on. But that is a potential, it's an opportunity there. Okay. Should we before, final comments before we transition to the Faneuil Hall program.
But isn't it true that
Just
just
think Suzanne is,
not the word, way
yeah, there she is.
I'm here.
Amazing. Share, okay,
the way we interpret it.
I'll zoom in a little. Okay, so this is the
Like,
Faneuil Hall Restoration and Preservation Program. I don't, from what I was told by the Treasury Department, I never heard this information. But I think they, they had a similar concept, and I think that it's a little bit more accessible to review instead of the, 400-page master plan. So I just figured we might review it and see how we think about this, and potentially we could present something similar to this to the Office of Economic Opportunity to see how they engage with it, and what they think about it, or and to the city in general, not just that department, but to the mayor. Okay, so a couple things. This was a great way to engage students. The Bayer essay contest, I'm saying that we do that, but transportation, written materials, publicity, they identified that off the bat, it's being at least almost $300,000. And the estimates were obtained by or from the committee on the bicentennial. Based on that national essay contest they held. They held, I guess, for the bicentennial. Or no, not the bicentennial, but for 1987. Oral history project, top my meeting older citizens. I think that's very similar to the neighborhood histories. I think that's very similar to the neighborhood histories. And videotaping and transcriptions, publication materials. So I think they were thinking the same thing and having it be a digital product. This is something that the Timeouts Archives and Curriculum Committee really wants as a product. They're not focused on it now because they're trying to build out that website, but they really think that it would be great to do that again and have a continuum there. It would be $30,000 in 1988. Traveling museum. Potentially not this, but instead we can figure out how to collaborate with the Boston Public Library and the museums to do 250 exhibits. So that it doesn't have to be traveling. Yeah, this one is Restoration of Artifacts and Antiques, owned by the Ancient and Honorable Artillery Company. Historic Research Assistance. When the Office of Historic Preservation needs this. So they did identify museums, which was great. They had the Fog Art Museum, Textile Museum. Slideshow / mini documentary. Use with tourists, civic groups, school children, etc. I think it'd be if we could do neighborhood histories as a mini documentary, that would be really cool. Separate from obviously what they were trying to do here. They did have sponsors, and they had a production that they were working with. That's something. So information kiosk. And then they go into detail about the exhibits that they want. So history of Ancient and Honorable Artillery Company, transformations of the marketplace, old photos, lithograph sketches, show the hall in different historical periods. The grasshopper, a modern history exhibit, architectural exhibit, sociocultural exhibit. So they definitely were thinking about the different kinds of different ways to engage somebody who might be visiting Faneuil Hall. Same thing. Commercial kiosks, including in-kind architectural and design assistance. Mayor's Award Program for Outstanding Citizens. I think this was interesting. This is an interesting concept. I think it's something that obviously the medals and whatever product is given will cost money, but I think that the idea of recognizing community leaders is a good idea. Historical artistic exhibits for display in neighboring buildings. Okay, so this is about engaging the environment, which is great. A music series, $50,000. They wanted a lecture series, which is a great idea. I know that at least Bunker Hill 250 is working on some lecture series. 10 concerts. I mean, I put together some concerts that I found that the city's already putting together. So I think it would be great if we could, if I could work with the people who are putting on those concerts to work on something like this, something in this capacity.
Sorry to interrupt you, and I'm on camera. I guess I'm just feeling a little overwhelmed as you're reviewing this list, and I'm wondering if a better approach might be for us to organize almost by audience, since we want to be a little bit more intentional.
Yeah.
In past celebrations, and almost figure out like who are the people we as a city want to reach, and then how do we reach them? Is that through a concert series? Is it through an concert? And then figure out where those people are. Like I saw a concert or a concert. Is it just a partnership? Yes. I think we just need to like break this up and then figure out who the organizations are in these spaces and what we're missing.
Okay.
And then that could get us to the budget. I don't feel like these budget numbers are relevant right now. Like, I think we almost have to start from scratch.
Oh, yeah. And that's perfect. It takes us to our next, sorry. It takes us to our next step, which is for us to figure out, what are the communities we want to reach? What are the organizations we might need to know? And, start identifying annual events. So I've created a list of some annual events I was able to find.
Yes.
I can review that. And I'm waiting for you guys, for the Office of Economic Opportunity to send me what they have for their annual events so that I could be able to parse through and start categorizing them and send them over to you guys, and we can have that discussion a little bit more intentionally. But we can still have that. We can still start this conversation with you, Leah. Sorry, and I'm now looking at the chat. Is BPS integrating any of this into the curriculum? Are they in touch with the city? So from what I know, BPS is already starting to integrate 250 into their curriculum. We do have a BPS appointee on the commission, but BPS is hard to pin down. So it hasn't been helpful, but we do need to get, I think, back in communication with them so that we can be intentional. We can review what they want and add to what
If
they're
I can be
doing.
helpful with that, just let me know the name of the person on the committee. Sorry, I don't have the full list in front of me, and I'll review the separate folks over there.
Okay, I'll do that.
The other thing I'll just add, anything involving museums at this point, most of the museums have already decided or are in the process of putting together their things. So this idea of coordinated anything, the most you're gonna get right now is a list of what they're already doing, right? The only opportunity I see for anything is digital. So if it's a digital kiosk in different parts of the city, where you can learn about these different institutions, historic sites, and they're allowed to have 3 to 5 objects, and there's parameters around the JPEG quality and word count around it, and then it's dumped into a larger thing that runs. That's an easier lift, but at this point, that horse has left the station, that train has left the station.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, if museums want to also send, you know, list of events and we can promote it, I think that's the most we could do. But I would agree. I think there's, especially for I think for both residents and tourists, you know, there's gonna be a big ask and a big need around being able to do something on your phone. And being able to engage with something that you're seeing digitally. So I would agree. I think it would make sense to flesh that out and also flesh out outside of neighborhoods, what exactly it is that we want. Who exactly do we want? Making sure that we. Sorry, there's a lot of background noise. I'm gonna mute myself. So would it make sense to review the list that I have started for some events that I know that the city is putting on? I mean, I don't, you know, because I think Celia made a great point about not going through those events because it's overwhelming. So, I mean, I don't know if it would make more sense to start categorizing things and seeing where the need is. I'm not sure how you guys would want to proceed.
Tennessee, I recall from an earlier meeting, I'm sorry, I missed the last subcommittee meeting, there was an Excel spreadsheet started where folks would plug in. Is that still alive? Should we just use that to start?
Yeah, it's still alive. I mean, I can share it here if you guys would like to have it handy. It still exists. I mean, even I had the form for people to submit events so that we could put stuff into our public website, but you know, I don't think people have been engaging with it. So yeah, I know if you guys have it open, it's not a very complete list. So if that's something that we want to, I mean, I can work on filling out what I have that are just events, not necessarily events that are commemorative, but just events that are happening. That's something that I can do. And because I think this was very specific, but I think potentially adding, you know, events that are happening and organizations that are taking part in organizing it might be a good idea for us to start, you know, having something to visually track that. Oh, Suzanne, let me see. Are you able to talk?
I think so. Can you hear me?
Mhm.
Yes. Tennessee, can you give us a update on any of the internal meetings that you've had recently with department heads and chiefs?
Yeah, I mean, I had a meeting with Chief Sweat with Chris Osgood, who's functioning as the director of historic preservation in the interim. The interim Boston Landmark Commission Executive Director is Alexa Pinard, and David Leonard from the BPL, and we just no. You know, I think they identified a couple of things that they wanted to happen. They wanted there to be a clear direction for the commission They wanted to help define the commission structure, so that is sure. So that means the potential commission quorum issues that we've been discussing. Keeping in mind, what Dr. Trent had said in our last meeting about the perception of an advisory committee, but still wanting to make sure that we are able to structure it in a way that's effective. Right, so they now want to meet with the new commission chairs to start working on governance and how they want to be engaged. And how they want the chiefs and the city at large to start engaging with them further. They also would like to identify appropriate support for the commission. I know that we have not yet identified what appropriate support looks like outside of suggestions that we've made, but that is something that they've identified. And another thing that they identified was obviously integration with current Boston events that are already happening. So I think those were 5 of the things that they had identified as needing to move forward. And so I'm working on getting that meeting for the commission chairs and the chiefs scheduled for not next week, but in 2 weeks. So anyway, so based on this, if we would like, I can start to fill this out, but potentially maybe we can talk through something similar to a report, but just for the events, exhibits, and trails subcommittee. I can go through that and start that myself, where we can identify essentially more specifically than in the general report, some of the ideas and concerns that you all have had, and things that you think would be good for next steps. But if you guys think that might be helpful, so that I can send that out to that group, to that planning group, and to the chiefs, I think it, just so that we can put a little bit more pressure on the situation, other than just that report, but something that's more specific. That might be helpful. I'd love to know what you guys think would be good for next steps.
I think the first thing we have to say for next steps in terms of what the report out, and Hennessy, this is just more for your benefit, we need more staff. Figure out whatever the level is in the city, whatever that salary is, and those are the minimums that we need. At this point, it doesn't make any sense. Well, my grandmother had another phrase for it, but we're being recorded, so I'm not going to say everything she said. Don't laugh at me, Amar. But it doesn't make any sense that you're still out here doing this by yourself this far along. This is grossly unfair to you. You are working far too hard on this, and all the good intentions in the world and all the fabulous projects that you've brought up to us and all the potentiality around this cannot be done by you. And so I think bold letters, 72 font, I'll pay for a banner to go across the city. You need support. So if we can just get you some support for this, because I can't I'm not gonna keep having these conversations with people
No.
and you keep begging for support and nobody in the city is moving. This is ridiculous. This is inappropriate. You have worked very hard to move this commission along with all these subcommittees and everything. And if the city wants a quality thing, they need to appreciate, one, what you've done, and two, give you the support so that this can be an effective commission.
I agree, trust me. I mean, on the
Let me
basic
know.
level,
I have no problem saying it to whoever it needs to be said to, but I think that
Yeah.
that's the first thing on behalf of this subcommittee. I think if we're all in agreement, maybe the statement is, we don't see the point of moving forward with any other proposed ideas unless there is a significant staffing increase for the support work of this. And intentional monies given to staffing.
Agreed.
Yeah, Suzanne,
Oh, can you hear me?
yes.
I agree with, Noel. Obviously, many of us have talked about this offline. And Hennessy, you are doing a fantastic job. You're like a one-man band for the whole city. I'm wondering if the chairs, when you have that meeting with the chairs, are they going to be saying the same things that we're saying here collectively as the events, exhibits and trails subcommittee?
I mean, Amanda, I think would have no problem advocating and saying those things. I think she is aware and agrees, specifically because Amanda's in the Legislation and Preservation Tools Subcommittee, but she is heading up Bunker Hill 250. So we're sitting there together and we know, and she knows the amount of labor that would be required, even if it requires just that much for Charlestown, how much more it would be required for Boston. And she is at this point well aware of how the city has engaged and or not engaged Charlestown as an institution. So I think she definitely would not have any qualms with advocating very specifically for what you guys say.
And then also, we're just, as you said earlier on the start of the meeting, close to 250 days away from the 250 days away from the 250th. We're also haven't really been talking about the 400th. Is the city, is the city looking at this commission as, okay, we're too late for the 250th, and we should be focusing on the 400th?
I don't think they are. I think they still want something to come out of 250. I mean, maybe they will take the reins on 250 and we focus on 400, but it seems to me as though they still would like input on the 250 from us, which.
Thank you.
And see what I think we're all in agreement that it's difficult for this subcommittee and for the commission as a whole to be effective without A, greater staff capacity, and B, some line of sight to what the funding available might be in order to give us a target to shoot at if we're going to propose plans. You are in the complicated position of being the advocate for your own needs. Would it be, I guess maybe I would just say this to the other committee members, perhaps we should go on the record as saying that we cannot be effective without additional staff capacity being made available, so that Hennessy is not the one who is saying, I believe this is the need. So I guess I'd propose that we simply vote a resolution to the effect that our ability to effectively comply with the charge that we've been given through the ordinance is contingent upon additional staff capacity being made available.
Well,
And
I'll
that way Hennessy can go and report that we have voted, I would imagine unanimously, to that effect. So she is not the one who is saying, this is something I want.
So Nat, are you making a formal motion to
Yeah,
that effect? All right, well,
I
I'll
am.
second that.
Third that.
That's
So
good.
I think one of the chairs now needs to call a vote.
All right, so
Oh.
Suzanne, we have a first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
I,
Um,
Anyone
Any
opposed?
opposed or abstentions? So moved.
Yeah.
I hope that's mildly helpful, although it probably won't be, but hopefully it will make it less awkward for you in advocating.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think it's definitely helpful to have it on the record to say, I mean, to be straight up, like what Dr. Trent said, you guys are not moving. There's no ability to move.
Yep.
And no incentive for you all to move without this capacity, without this support. So, yes.
So how do we now create this statement and submit it? I assume that's like via you, Hennessy, but like without that being awkward for you as well.
No, at this point, it's not awkward for me because I've I've had to take it all the way to the top to say, this doesn't work. So it's the one, thank God, it's the one thing I know how to do is advocate for myself. So
Yeah.
I think I can do something, similar to the report, maybe just have to be a letter. I can write that, I can write it out, send it to you guys for editing, for approval, and send it out.
I think because you have the recording, and I think Nat phrased it appropriately, just transcribe what he said. And that is the formal motion. And so all you need to do is submit that a formal motion was made by the subcommittee regarding the following suggestion,
Mhm.
and then put the language in.
Yep. Yeah,
You are
and
not-
it will be in the minutes, so
It'll be in
you
the
have
minutes,
that
but you can
as
also
backup.
submit it as
Yeah.
part of the minutes, but also just, if you're gonna call it out, this was the motion, this is what they voted on.
Yeah,
It's not a you thing, it is about what this subcommittee has determined is in the best interest of the commission moving forward.
yeah, I mean, and I say having it separate because, I'll put it in the minutes. Who do I know do I know people are reading the minutes? That's why I'm saying it should be, it doesn't have to be long, but it should be separate. So that it states an intention that is bigger than just, this is what happened and this is what they voted, but they voted on something and the city needs to respond to it.
Is there additional follow-up that would be helpful from the chairs of this subcommittee? Not that I'm trying to give y'all more work, but it might be helpful.
My suggestion, honestly, if it's possible, I would love for the chairs to come to one of those internal project management meetings so that you guys could talk to them and see what they are thinking, and then they can get some face-to-face perspective on what we're thinking about and what we're going through. So I don't know if you guys think that's a good idea, but I really think that would be effective potentially. Suzanne.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I'll make myself available whenever that is. Amari probably feels the same way, and I think
Yep.
the other committee co-chairs should also be there. So there's a unified voice as far as our work moving forward is concerned. And I do have to leave. I do apologize. I'm about ready to head out so that I can promote our great city and our 250th anniversaries to group operators all over the United States over the weekend and into next. I'm just gonna tell them it's gonna be great. But I will say that, you know, Hennessy, you mentioned the Mott grant. My plan, and I've talked with Revolution 250 about this, our plan at the foundation is to, and for not only Boston, but obviously the Freedom Trail sites, is to apply for a marketing grant. And part of that grant, you know, I would hope to talk with the city about it, but somebody needs to do something, so I'm gonna do it. And hopefully we'll get some money and, you know, we'll start promoting the 250th in the city, at some great level, hopefully.
Nah.
Just thinking about time here, recognizing Suzanne's got to depart and the meeting won't last much longer. We're in open discussion. We are still somewhere between annual events and organizations to know and begin identifying next steps. And I just want to flag that I think Celia's contribution around audience is actually probably the best next step for us if we're going to try to sort of generate some ideas and a framework. So I think if we could identify the audience segments that we are seeking to reach, we can create a grid, right, where we can identify what's already existing as a plan that's moving forward in the next 2 years out of City Hall, maybe where we know other organizations around town are planning something that could potentially align, right? We can put in things as they relate to the particular audience segments, and that will allow us to do a little bit of gap analysis and see, like, where do we have some holes. And you know, I think with uncertainty about funding, that might allow us to have a set of ideas that are like, hey, to fill these gaps, here's the small version, here's something more ambitious, and here's like, hey, if we had something comparable to the funding that was available for the bicentennial, what could we do? It would be amazing. Although I think it's, at this point, it's not just funding, it's also time. So even with all the money in the world, we might not be able to achieve anything huge at this point. But to me, that feel like I share Celia's feeling of being a little overwhelmed and not knowing how to get purchase. And I think that might just be a way to get some traction.
I agree. I think, maybe I can, if we still want to use that events spreadsheet that I sent out, maybe I can restructure it to include audiences.
Yeah, I mean,
Just
that
add a
spreadsheet is
page.
like historical events, and I
No,
don't think
yeah.
that's really what we need to know is like, what are the activities, whether they're exhibits, events, or existing trails, I don't know, planned new trails, you know, that fall in our bailiwick that that we could plug in. Sorry, Suzanne.
Amari's team, and correct me if I'm wrong, Amari, Esther, has already started something that you described, Nat. So it's in the works, which is great.
Yeah, and so maybe Hennessy, you maybe the charge might be just to schedule something with Esther and combine forces on like a one grandmaster sheet.
Yeah. Yes, that would be great. I mean, I know we definitely have some events on our ends that we could add. I think that would be great. So oh, hi Esther. You're here. So I'll reach out to Esther after this and set up a meeting so that we can have a product that we can share with you guys and something that we can walk through for the next meeting.
And the Art and Culture Summit is planned for November 7th, and that's another opportunity, and folks should have gotten an invite for that on this. For folks who are on the art and culture side, and I believe an invitation was extended to the Rev 250 folks to attend if they're available, and it's 2 days after the election, but just so that folks could convene and talk about what they're already doing there, but also it might be a space to have folks recharge their batteries, given what may have just occurred 2 days before. And thinking about the role of folks like us who are makers and culture creators and stewards of this, to just think about our role in thinking about the new so I'll make sure that Esther will make sure that that also gets sent out to folks, because that might be another way to collect just in real time, collect the people's event schedule as well. I know that the two of you will be kind of doing that together between now and then anyway.
I'd just like to add, I'm just looking at my calendar, and that is a day that we actually have one of our subcommittee meetings at 2.
Okay.
Mari, I know that the first one that was held was over around 1 or 1:30. Do we want to reschedule our subcommittee meeting for that day? Because most of us, well, hopefully most of us will be there for a good part of the day.
Well, I mean, if we want, it's going to be at Mass Art. If folks feel like if people want to, lunch will be served, so if people want to stay for an extra hour or so and do it in person, since we'll mostly already be there and we'll have the space. I think we could just extend, if that could be, I mean, that, we could reschedule it, or that this other idea could be.
I like your idea.
What day is it?
November 7th.
Teen events exhibits trail. I see it for the 14th. There's a timelines archiving curriculum one for the 7th. Yeah. I mean, if
Can
you
I
are-
throw something out there? I know we don't have a number and we're all very cautious about it, but if we're timelines, events and exhibits, I'm just gonna throw a number, minimum 10 million for each, like, and if we say that that's the benchmark and then add or subtract as we figure out where things are going around that, I just think we need a number, and you can say that's the most ridiculous number in the world, but we need a number to start telling somebody around something, even if it could go above or below this, but we're thinking that in these 3 buckets, it's going to be about 10 million to produce anything. And I think it's reasonable, because if you put digital behind any of that, that's a very expensive venture, right? But I'm just trying to give us a number, and then as we build up to it, or as we're building things into it, we can project, are we going to exceed that number, or are we going to be well below that number? But I feel like we need something as we're thinking audiences and stuff. So as we have something, is this a $10 million event, or is this a $5 million event? There's no number that anyone's put out there as a point of reference for us to think, is this going to be more or less? And so I just want to throw that out there as a concept. It could be 5 per area, but I just want us to give us some level of thinking about this. I know we're all very cautious because it's city money. We want to make sure we're using it appropriately, but we need a target to say what we're building to or not, because I feel like we're getting really close to this, and there's a lot of things that we need. Plus there's also staffing in there, right? So is that including staffing or without? But I just think that we need to think about, give ourselves some sort of number that we at least want to go in and say, and they could say, oh, that's too much. All right, well then let's scaffold down or scaffold up from that.
Noel, just quick clarifying question. So you're saying 10 million, 10 million, 10 million, so total $30 million as the benchmark.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah, and just for
Just
reference,
as a baseline, just
yep,
as a baseline.
as I said, the Boston 200, if you do the math on really low inflation numbers, it's been much higher, but I was just using 2.5% inflation per year. That comes to over 40 million. And it looked like on the Faneuil Hall report, just to give us some benchmarks, that the programmatic piece, which was what we looked at, not including the preservation money, which was also in their $15 million total, but the programmatic piece inflated from 1988, which is what I used, would be a little over $5 million. So, and that was a pretty that's all focused on Faneuil Hall, so smaller in scale than what we've been charged with imagining. So I think what you're proposing is in the right zone.
It sounds great. I will mention, well, you all know that we are in FY '25 basically. We'd be looking at FY '26, I would think, unless this money comes from some magical place that we don't know exists yet. But it's nice to have a number, and I'd like to be positive, and maybe we can find it somewhere.
I don't think our job is to think about the reality of it. I think our job is to say, if this is what you want, this is what it's going to cost you. And whether that's budgeted or public-private partnership, if this is what we want to do to be competitive with other, and I'm usually not someone to say, let's worry about what other people are doing, but if this is what we want to be competitive and have a meaningful and memorable commemoration, this is what it's going to cost. We just got to put a number on it.
I'm gonna start buying scratch tickets.
Whatever it takes.
Scratching for Boston. I better be.
Sorry, Zane. I think this is a good starting point. And I think it's actually, something that I can present to the internal team and see how they react and see, what they have for updates in terms of how they advocated for a budget if they did. So I think this is a good starting point. And yeah, okay, so I'll reach out, work with Esther to compile that list. I will just write up, the resolution and send it out, try to intimidate some people. And I definitely know that there are other things that I'm forgetting, but I'm going to try to make sure that, we get all of this done. Yeah, also that if you guys would want to just meet on that day, that's okay with me as well, and then we don't have to meet on the 14th. So if we think we're at a good stopping point, we can end the meeting. But if we have any final comments, now's the time.
Do we need a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
Motion to adjourn.
I get a second.
Second.
Okay, great. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.